Welcome to Thrones Rewritten. Today we're diving into an epic Game of Thrones what-if tale that reimagines the fight for the Iron Throne. Picture Jon Snow uncovering a world-shaking secret about his true heritage and boldly challenging Joffrey's cruel reign. From the icy wall to the fiery streets of King's Landing, this story weaves political intrigue, fierce battles, and the rise of a new king. If you love Game of Thrones twists and bold reimaginings, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more. Let's get started. The winds howled over the wall, carrying the bitter chill of the far north. Jon Snow stood atop the ancient fortification, his black cloak snapping in the gusts, his gloved hand resting on the hilt of Longclaw. The Night's Watch was his life now, or so he had sworn. Yet as he gazed south, toward a realm fracturing under the weight of a boy king's cruelty, his heart stirred with whispers of a truth he could no longer ignore. It had been weeks since Samwell Tarly, trembling and pale, had pressed a crumbling parchment into his hands, a letter hidden in the depths of Castle Black's library, written in the spidery hand of a long-dead maester. It spoke of a secret marriage, a prince's love, and a child born in a tower under a bleeding star. Jon had read it 100 times, each word burning deeper into his soul. Rhaegar Targaryen, Lyanna Stark, a son, hidden as a bastard to shield him from a vengeful world. He was no Snow. He was Aegon Targaryen, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. For days Jon had wrestled with the revelation. Duty bound him to the wall, to the brothers in black who had become his family. But the South was a festering wound. Joffrey Baratheon, a sadistic child cloaked in gold, sat the throne, his whims drowning the Seven Kingdoms in blood. Ned Stark, the man Jon had called father, was dead, beheaded on the steps of the Great Sept. Sansa was a hostage, Arya missing, and Robb waged desperate wars as the king in the north. The realm needed a king, not a monster. Jon turned from the wall, his boots crunching in the snow. He descended the creaking steps, his mind made up. He would go south, not as a deserter, but as a claimant. The Night's Watch would survive without him. The realm might not. The road to Winterfell was a gauntlet of mud and mistrust. Jon traveled alone, his black cloak traded for a plain gray one, Longclaw concealed beneath a tattered mantle. He rode a sturdy garret, avoiding the King's Road where Joffrey's spies and sellswords prowled. The north was Robb's now, but loyalty was a fragile thing in wartime, and Jon knew his claim could shatter the fragile unity of the Stark bannermen. Winterfell loomed against the gray sky, its towers scarred but standing. The castle was a hive of activity, soldiers drilling, ravens cawing, and bannermen arguing in the great hall. Jon slipped through the gates as a weary traveler, his hood low. He was no stranger here, yet he felt like an intruder. The boy who had grown up in these halls was gone. In his place stood a man carrying a dangerous truth. Rupp was in the solar when Jon was admitted. The young wolf looked older than his 17 years, his auburn hair unkempt, his eyes shadowed by the weight of kingship. Catelyn Stark stood at his side, her face a mask of grief and resolve. The air thickened as Jon entered, his resemblance to Ned Stark a silent wound. "Jon," Robb said, rising. His voice was warm but cautious. "Why are you here? The wall—" I'm no deserter," Jon said, his voice steady. He pulled the parchment from his cloak and set it on the table. "Read this, then we'll talk." Robb's brow furrowed as he unfolded the letter. Catelyn's eyes narrowed, her lips thinning. As Robb read, his face paled, and he passed the parchment to his mother. Her hands trembled as she scanned the words, her gaze snapping to Jon. "This is madness," Catelyn whispered. "A maester's scribble, nothing more. You'd risk everything for this?" "It's the truth," Jon said. "I'm not Ned Stark's bastard. I'm Rhaegar's son. The Iron Throne is mine by right." Robb stared at him, torn between disbelief and something deeper, fear, perhaps, or hope. "Jon, you're my brother. Blood or no, that doesn't change. But this could tear the North apart. My bannermen fight for a Stark, not a Targaryen." "I don't want to fight you," Jon said. "I want to save the realm. Joffrey's a tyrant. The Lannisters bleed the land dry. If I claim my birthright, we can end this war together." Catelyn's voice was ice. "And what then? You think the lords of Westeros will kneel to a boy raised as a bastard, waving a scrap of paper? The Targaryens are hated, Jon. Your claim will bring fire and blood, not peace." Jon met her gaze unflinching. "Fire and blood are already here. I can't stay silent while the realm burns." Robb paced, his hand on the hilt of his sword. If you do this, Jon, you'll need more than words. You'll need swords, banners, proof. The North is mine, but I won't stand against you, not yet. Convince my lords, and we'll see. The great hall of Winterfell was a sea of hard faces. The bannermen of the North, Umber, Karstark, Mormont, and a dozen others, filled the benches, their voices a low rumble. Robb sat at the high table, Jon beside him, the parchment laid out like a challenge. Ghost Jon's direwolf lay at his feet, his red eyes glinting in the torchlight. Great Jon Umber was the first to speak, his voice booming. A Targaryen! Ah! I bent the knee to a Stark, not some dragon spawn. What proof have you, boy? Jon rose, his heart pounding but his voice calm. This letter, written by Maester Aemon's own hand, records my birth. My mother was Lyanna Stark, my father Rhaegar Targaryen. They wed in secret, and I was born legitimate. Ned Stark hid me to protect me from Robert's wrath. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Rickard Karstark, his face lined with grief for his lost son, spat. A convenient tale! Why should we believe it? You've been a Snow all your life. Because Ned Stark raised me as his own, Jon said. He died to protect the realm, and I'll do the same. Joffrey's no king. He's a butcher. I'm not here to steal Robb's crown. I'm here to take the Iron Throne and end this war. Mage Mormont, her bearish frame leaning forward, I studied Jon. You've got Stark blood, I'll give you that. But Targaryen, that's a harder sell. What do you offer us, lad? Unity, Jon said. The North fights for Robb, but the South will never bend to a Stark. They'll kneel to a Targaryen, one raised in the North, tempered by honor. I'll forge an alliance, bring the Vale and Riverlands to our side. Together we'll crush the Lannisters. The hall erupted in shouts. Some lords cheered, others scoffed. Robb raised a hand, silencing them. Jon's my brother, he said. I trust him. But this is no small thing. If we back his claim, we risk everything. Who stands with him? Greatjon lumbered to his feet. I'll not kneel to a dragon, but I'll fight for a Stark. If the lad's got the balls to face Joffrey, I'll give him my sword for now. Mage Mormont nodded. I'll follow. But you'd best prove your worth, Targaryen or not. Karstark and others remained silent, their eyes cold. Jon knew he had won a fragile victory, but it was enough. For now. Word of Jon's claim spread like wildfire, carried by ravens and whispers. In King's Landing, the Red Keep was a nest of vipers, and Joffrey Baratheon was its most venomous occupant. The boy king lounged on the Iron Throne, his golden hair gleaming, his lips curled in a petulant sneer. Cersei, his mother, stood beside him, her face a mask of regal composure, though her eyes betrayed her fear. Tyrion Lannister, the imp, lingered in the shadows, his mismatched eyes sharp. A Targaryen bastard! Joffrey scoffed, tossing the report into the air. Some northern whelp thinks he can steal my throne? I'll have his head on a spike. Cersei's voice was smooth but tense. He's no mere bastard, your grace. The North rallies to him, and Robb Stark hasn't denounced his claim. If the Vale or Riverlands join them, we face a war on 3 fronts. Tyrion sipped his wine, his tone dry. A Targaryen raised as a Stark, wielding a Valyrian steel sword and a direwolf. The small folk will eat it up. He's a story, and stories are dangerous. Joffrey's face reddened. I want him dead. Send the Kingsguard. Burn Winterfell to the ground. Cersei placed a hand on his arm. Patience, my love. We'll deal with this pretender, but we must be clever. The Tyrells are wavering, and Dorne despises us. We can't afford mistakes. Tyrion arched a brow. Then perhaps we should meet this Jon Snow. If he's truly Rhaegar's son, he might be reasoned with. If not, a dagger in the dark is cheaper than a war. Cersei's eyes flashed. You'd parley with a traitor? I'd rather know my enemy, Tyrion said. Send a raven, invite him to King's Landing under a flag of truce. Let's see what this dragon is made of. Jon's host marched south, a patchwork army of Northmen and Riverlanders. Robb had given him 5,000 men, led by Greatjon and Mage, while Edmure Tully contributed 2,000 more. It was a modest force, but Jon knew swords alone wouldn't win the throne. He needed allies, and the Vale was his next target. At a camp along the Trident, Jon met with his commanders. The air was thick with the scent of mud and smoke, and Ghost prowled the perimeter, his white fur a stark contrast to the gloom. Jon unrolled a map, his finger tracing the Vale's borders. "Lysa Arryn's no friend to the Lannisters," Jon said. "If we can sway her, her knights will tip the balance." Greyjohn snorted. "Lysa's mad as a hare. She'll not leave her Eyrie for love nor gold." "Then we'll go to her," Jon said. "I'll ride to the Vale with a small party. Robb's her nephew, and I'm Ned's son in her eyes. She'll listen." Mage frowned. "And if she doesn't? The Vale's a fortress. You'll be at her mercy." "I'll take the risk," Jon said. "We need her banners." That night as Jon lay in his tent, a raven's cry woke him, a message sealed with black wax. He broke it open, his eyes scanning the words. An invitation from King's Landing, signed by Tyrion Lannister. A parley under a flag of truce. Jon's jaw tightened. It was a trap, or at best a ploy to delay him. Yet the thought of facing Joffrey, of seeing Sansa, stirred something in him. He tucked the letter away, his decision unmade. The Eyrie was a marvel and a nightmare, perched atop a mountain, its white towers gleaming like bones against the sky. Jon, accompanied by a dozen men and Ghost, ascended the treacherous path, his heart heavy with doubt. Lysa Arryn was unpredictable, and her son Robert was a sickly child with a cruel streak. In the high hall, Lysa sat on her weirwood throne, her face pinched and pale. Little Robert giggled at her side, clutching a doll. The Knights of the Vale lined the walls, their armor gleaming. "You're Ned's bastard," Lysa said, her voice sharp. "Why should I care for you?" "I'm more than that," Jon said, producing the parchment. "I'm Rhaegar Targaryen's son, and I mean to take the Iron Throne. The Vale's strength could win this war. Join me, and we'll avenge Ned Stark." Lysa's eyes flickered to the letter, then to Ghost, who stood silent but menacing. "Targaryens brought ruin to my family. Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm a Stark, too," Jon said. "I fight for the North, for Robb, for Sansa and Arya. Help me, and we'll bring justice to the Lannisters." Little Robert giggled, tossing his doll at Ghost. The dire wolf didn't flinch, but his eyes locked on the boy. Lysa gasped, pulling her son close. "Keep that beast away!" Jon knelt, his voice soft. "Lady Lysa, I mean you no harm, but the realm bleeds. Will you stand with us or hide while the Lannisters destroy everything?" Lysa's lips trembled. After a long silence, she nodded. "The Vale will march, but if you betray us, boy, I'll see you dead." Jon's army swelled with Vale Knights, their banners a riot of color against the drab riverlands. Yet the Lannister invitation gnawed at him. As his host camped at the Crossroads Inn, Jon made his choice. He would go to King's Landing, not to bend the knee, but to look Joffrey in the eye and declare his claim. He wrote to Tyrion, accepting the parley, and prepared to ride south with a small escort. Ghost would stay with the army. His presence would only inflame tensions. As Jon mounted his horse, Greyjohn clapped his shoulder. "Don't let those Southron snakes charm you, lad," he rumbled. "You're a wolf, not a dragon." Jon nodded, but as he rode into the dawn, he felt the weight of both beasts within him. The road to King's Landing was fraught with peril, but it was the path to his destiny. The King's Road stretched south like a scar across the land, its edges frayed by war. Jon Snow rode at the head of a small escort, 20 men, hand-picked from the north and the Vale, their faces grim under steel helms. Longclaw rested at his hip, its weight a constant reminder of the path he'd chosen. The invitation from King's Landing, penned in Tyrion Lannister's sharp hand, was tucked inside his cloak, its words both a lure and a warning. A parley under a flag of truce, it promised. Jon knew better than to trust a Lannister, but he also knew the realm's eyes were on him. Every step toward the capital was a declaration. Aegon Targaryen was no myth, but a man, and he was coming for his throne. The air grew warmer as they crossed the Trident, the bitter chill of the north giving way to the damp heat of the Crownlands. Jon's gray cloak was stained with mud, his face shadowed by days on the road. His men spoke little, their loyalty tempered by the uncertainty of his claim. He was their lord, their hope, but also a riddle, a Stark raised as a bastard, now calling himself a dragon. Jon felt their doubts like a blade at his back, but he pressed on. The realm needed a king, not a boy who played at cruelty on a throne of swords. At dusk they camped in a copse of oaks, the glow of King's Landing just visible on the horizon. Jon sat by the fire, sharpening Longclaw, when Sir Brendan Tully, the Blackfish, approached. The grizzled knight had joined Jon's escort at Edmure's urging, his presence a bridge to the Riverland's battered lords. "You're walking into a trap, lad," Brynden said, his voice low. "The Lannisters don't parley, they scheme. Joffrey's a fool, but Cersei and the Imp are sharp as Valyrian steel." Jon's eyes didn't leave the blade. "I know, but if I refuse, I look weak. The small folk whisper of a Targaryen, and the lords watch to see if I'm real. I need to face Joffrey, even if it's in his den." Brynden snorted. "Brave or mad? Ned Stark's blood, sure enough. But you're playing a game you don't know. The court's a pit of vipers, and you're no courtier." "Then I'll be a wolf," Jon said, sheathing Longclaw. "Or a dragon. Whatever they fear most." Brynden's lips twitched almost a smile. "Aye, well, keep your eyes open and your sword close. And if it comes to blood, don't hesitate. Lannisters don't." The city sprawled before them, its walls blackened by years of soot and siege. The stench of refuse and salt hit Jon as they approached the Lion Gate, where gold cloaks stood in rigid ranks, their spears glinting in the midday sun. A herald in crimson and gold stepped forward, his voice carrying over the clatter of hooves. "Jon Snow, claiming the name Aegon Targaryen, you're admitted to King's Landing under a flag of truce. Surrender your weapons and follow." Jon's men bristled, hands drifting to sword hilts. He raised a hand, stilling them. "We'll keep our blades," he said, his voice calm but firm. "A truce goes both ways. If your king wants peace, he'll honor it." The herald's eyes narrowed, but a figure emerged from the gate, short, scarred, with a wineskin in hand. Tyrion Lannister, the Imp, wore a doublet of crimson velvet, his mismatched eyes gleaming with curiosity and caution. "No need for a brawl at the gates," Tyrion said, his tone light. "His Grace insists on decorum, but I'll vouch for you. Keep your swords, Lord Snow. Or is it Prince Aegon now? Come, let's not keep the court waiting." Jon dismounted, his men following suit. Tyrion's gaze lingered on him, sharp and searching, as if peeling back layers to find the truth beneath. Jon met it without flinching. He was no boy to be cowed, not any more. The streets of King's Landing were a maze of noise and filth, the small folk pressing close to glimpse the northern lord who called himself a Targaryen. Whispers followed him. Dragon, bastard, pretender. And Jon felt their weight. Some faces held hope, others fear. He kept his head high, his stride steady, until they reached the Red Keep. The Iron Throne loomed at the far end of the Great Hall, its jagged edge is a testament to conquest and cruelty. Joffrey Baratheon sat upon it, his golden crown slightly askew, his lips curled in a sneer. Cersei stood at his right, her emerald gown shimmering, her face a mask of regal disdain. The court was a sea of silks and scheming eyes, lords, ladies, and knights, their murmurs a low hum. Sir Jaime Lannister, resplendent in white, stood with his Kingsguard, his hand on his sword. Tyrion took his place near the throne, his expression unreadable. Jon strode forward, his escort fanning out behind him. Brynden's warning echoed in his mind, but he pushed it aside. This was his moment, his chance to declare his claim before the realm. "Jon Snow," Joffrey drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "The bastard of Winterfell, come to play at king. Kneel, and I might spare you a traitor's death." Jon stopped at the base of the throne, his gray eyes locked on Joffrey's. "I'm no bastard," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, wed in secret before the gods. The Iron Throne is mine by right, and I have come to claim it." The hall erupted in gasps and shouts. Cersei's eyes flashed, her fingers tightening on her son's arm. Joffrey's face reddened, his voice rising to a shriek. "Lies! You're a traitor, a filthy northern dog! I'll have your head!" "Enough!" Cersei snapped, her voice cutting through the din. She stepped forward, her gaze cold and calculating. "You bring bold words, Jon Snow, but words are not proof. Where is this marriage recorded? Who witnessed it? You expect us to believe a northern tale spun to steal a crown?" Jon produced the parchment, its edges worn but intact. "This letter, written by Maester Aemon, records my birth and my parents' vows. The North knows the truth. And the Vale stands with me. The Riverlands, too, tire of your son's tyranny. I offer you a chance for peace. Yield the throne, and no more blood needs spill." Tyrion took the parchment, his eyes scanning it quickly. "A compelling story," he said, his tone neutral. "But one letter does not a king make. The realm is at war. and claims like yours breed chaos. Why should we trust you?" "Because I was raised by Ned Stark," Jon said. "I know honor, duty, and sacrifice. Joffrey's rule is a plague. Taxes bleed the small folk, his justice is cruelty, and his wars tear the land apart. I'll end it. I'll bring peace." Joffrey leapt to his feet, his sword half drawn. "I'll cut out your tongue. Guards, seize him!" Jaime's hand tightened on his hilt, but Tyrion raised a hand. "Your Grace, a truce was promised. Killing our guest would complicate matters. Perhaps we should hear him out." Cersei's lips thinned, but she nodded. "Speak, then. What do you propose?" "A council," Jon said. "Call the lords of Westeros, Storm's End, Highgarden, and Dorne. Let them judge my claim. If they deny me, I'll return to the north. If they uphold it, Joffrey steps down." The court murmured, some nodding, others scoffing. Cersei's eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse?" "Then I march on King's Landing," Jon said, his voice steel, "with the North, the Vale, and every lord who hates your name. Choose wisely." Joffrey's scream was cut off by Cersei's sharp gesture. She studied Jon, her mind clearly racing. "We will consider your proposal," she said. "You'll remain our guest until then. Quarters have been prepared." Jon inclined his head, sensing the trap but knowing he had no choice. "I accept." The chambers were lavish, a gilded cage overlooking Blackwater Bay. Jon's men were housed nearby, under heavy guard. Brynden paced like a caged wolf, his voice low. "They'll kill you the moment you're alone. We should leave now." "We can't," Jon said. "If I flee, my claim dies. I need to sway the court, or at least the small folk. They're the key." Brynden grunted. "You're too much like Ned. Honor will get you killed here." Jon didn't answer. He knew the risk, but he also knew the power of a story. The small folk had loved Rhaegar, and they despised Joffrey. If he could reach them, the city might turn. That night, a knock came at his door. Tyrion Lannister slipped inside, a flagon of wine in hand. "I thought we might talk, Lord Snow. Or is it your grace now?" "Jon will do," Jon said, gesturing to a chair. "What do you want?" Tyrion poured 2 cups, sliding one across the table. "To understand you. You're either the boldest man I've ever met, or the maddest. A Targaryen claim, backed by a single letter and a direwolf's glare. It's a gamble even I wouldn't take." Jon sipped the wine, wary but curious. "You don't believe me?" "I believe you believe it," Tyrion said. "That's dangerous enough. The realm's a powder keg. Robb in the north, Stannis in the Stormlands, Renly's ghost still haunting the Reach. Your claim could light the spark that burns us all." "Then help me stop it," Jon said. "You know Joffrey's unfit. Back my claim and I'll spare your family. I don't want vengeance. I want peace." Tyrion's laugh was bitter. "You think Cersei will let her son step down, or that Jaime will stand by while you take the throne? You're dreaming, Jon, but I'll give you this. You've got courage, and you're not wrong about Joffrey." Jon leaned forward. "Then what's your play? Why bring me here?" Tyrion's eyes gleamed. "Because I'd rather deal with a known quantity than a shadow. If you're Rhaegar's son, you might be reasoned with. If you're a fraud, you're dead already. Either way, I'd like to know before the knives come out." Jon held his gaze. "I'm no fraud, and I'm not here to die." Tyrion raised his cup. "To not dying, then. We'll see how long that lasts." Over the next days, Jon was confined to the Red Keep, a guest in name but a prisoner in truth. Yet the city buzzed with his presence. Servants whispered of the northern lord who looked like Ned Stark, but claimed a dragon's blood. Merchants spoke of his dire wolf, now housed in the stables, its red eyes a portent. The small folk, crushed by taxes and war, began to dream of a king who might listen. Jon seized every chance to reach them. When allowed to walk the keep's courtyards, he spoke to guards and stable boys, his northern accent and plain manner a stark contrast to the court's decadence. He told stories of the north, of Ned's justice, of Rhaegar's songs, the tales spread carried by maids and dock workers to the taverns of Flea Bottom. One evening a young woman slipped into his chambers, a kitchen girl, her hands rough from work. "They're talking about you, my lord," she said, her eyes wide. "Say you're Rhaegar come again, come to save us from the monster king." Jon's heart quickened. "What do they say of Joffrey?" "They hate him," she whispered. He starves us, kills for sport. If you're truly a king, they'll follow you, but you gotta show 'em." Jon pressed a coin into her hand. "Tell them I'm here. Tell them I'll fight for them." She nodded and vanished into the shadows. Jon knew the risk. Stoking rebellion could backfire, painting him as a traitor. But he also knew the smallfolk were his greatest weapon. If they rose, Joffrey's throne would crumble. Cersei called a council to hear Jon's claim, a spectacle designed to humiliate him. The Great Hall was packed. Lords of the Crown Lands, Tyrell envoys, even a Dornish emissary. His eyes sharp with interest. Joffrey sat on the throne fidgeting while Cersei presided, her voice smooth as silk. "Jon Snow," she said, "you claim a throne that is not yours. Present your proof and let the realm judge." Jon stood alone, the parchment in hand. He read its words aloud, his voice steady, recounting Rhaegar's marriage and his own birth. He spoke of Ned's sacrifice, of the North's loyalty, of the need for a king who ruled with justice, not fear. The hall listened, some faces skeptical, others intrigued. Lord Mace Tyrell, his jowls quivering, spoke first. "A fine tale, but where are the witnesses? A master's word, long dead, is no proof." The Dornish emissary, Sir André Dalt, leaned forward. "Dorne remembers Rhaegar fondly. If this boy is his son, we would hear more, but a claim without swords is wind." Cersei smiled, sensing weakness. "You see? Your story is thin, Snow. The throne is Joffrey's, ordained by the gods." Jon's eyes swept the hall. "The gods don't choose kings. The people do. The small folk starve while Joffrey feasts. The lords fight while he hides. I offer a realm united, not divided. Judge me by my deeds, not my birth." The hall murmured some nodding. Tyrion's lips twitched as if amused. Cersei's smile faltered. But Joffrey's shout shattered the moment. "He's a liar! A traitor! I'll have him flayed!" The outburst drew gasps. Lords exchanged glances, their faith in Joffrey visibly waning. Jon seized the moment. "A true king doesn't scream for blood. He builds. He protects. I'm here to protect the realm. Who stands with me?" Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Then Sir André rose. "Dorne will consider your claim, Aegon Targaryen. Send word to Sun Spear, and we'll talk." Mace Tyrell hesitated, then nodded. "The Reach will hear you out, but we need more than words." Cersei's face was a storm. "This council is ended. Snow, you remain our guest. We'll decide your fate soon." That night Jon woke to the creak of a floorboard. His hand found Longclaw as a shadow moved in the darkness. Steel flashed, and he rolled from the bed, the blade missing him by inches. He lunged, pinning the attacker, a cloaked man, his face hidden. Jon's sword was at his throat when guards burst in, torches blazing. "Hold!" Tyrion's voice cut through the chaos. "What in the seven hells is this?" The assassin was dragged away, but Jon knew the truth. Cersei, or perhaps Joffrey, had tired of games. The truce was broken. By dawn, the city was alive with rumors. The small folk spoke of the Northern Lord who'd survived a Lannister blade, their whispers turning to chants. "Aegon, Aegon," they called, their voices rising in the streets. Jon met Tyrion in the courtyard, his face grim. "Your sister tried to kill me?" Tyrion sighed. "Not my sister, I'd wager. Joffrey's less subtle. But you're a problem now, Jon. The small folk love you, and the lords are wavering. Leave, or you'll be dead by week's end." Jon shook his head. "I'm not leaving. Call your council again. Let the realm choose." Tyrion studied him, then nodded. "You're either a king or a corpse. I'll arrange it. But watch your back." As Jon prepared for the next council, word came from the north. Robb had crushed a Lannister force at Oxcross, his wolves howling through the Westerlands. The Vale's knights marched to join Jon's army, and Dorne sent a raven promising talks. The tide was turning, but King's Landing was a powder keg. In the streets, the small folk gathered, their chants growing bolder. Jon's name was a prayer, a curse, a spark. When a gold cloak struck a woman for shouting Aegon, the crowd surged, blood spilling in the alleys. The riots spread, and the Red Keep's gates groaned under the pressure. Jon stood at his window, watching the city burn. He'd wanted peace, but war was coming. The council would be his last chance to avoid it. If he failed, the realm would drown in fire and blood. The Red Keep was a fortress under siege, not by swords, but by the voices of the small folk. Their chants echoed through the streets of King's Landing, a tide of anger and hope swelling with each passing day. "Aegon, Aegon," they cried, their words a blade at the throat of Joffrey's fragile reign. Jon Snow, now openly called Aegon Targaryen by those who believed, stood at the heart of the storm, his every move watched by friend and foe alike. The council Tyrion had promised loomed like a trial, a chance to solidify his claim or see it shattered. But the city was a tinderbox, and Jon knew one spark could set it ablaze. His chambers in the Red Keep were a gilded prison, guarded by gold cloaks whose loyalty was as thin as their cloaks. Sir Brynden Tully, ever the Blackfish, had taken to sleeping with his sword drawn, his sharp eyes scanning every shadow. The attempt on Jon's life had hardened their resolve, but also exposed the fragility of their position. Cersei's truce was a lie, and Joffrey's temper was a fuse burning ever shorter. Jon's escort, now reduced to 15 men after a skirmish with sellswords in the keep's halls, was a thin shield against the Lannisters' schemes. Yet Jon felt a fire growing within him, a blend of Stark resolve and Targaryen ambition. The small folk's faith was his strength, their whispers of Rhaegar's son a shield against the court's disdain. He had come to King's Landing to claim a throne, but now he saw a greater purpose, to save a realm on the brink of ruin. The council would be his battlefield, and words his weapons. The riots in Flea Bottom had not abated. The small folk, emboldened by tales of Jon's survival and his defiance in the throne room, clashed with gold cloaks in the alleys. Bread riots turned to rebellions, with cries of Aegon mingling with curses against Joffrey. The city watch was stretched thin, and whispers of desertions had reached Jon's ears. The small folk were no army, but their numbers were a force no lord could ignore. Jon seized every chance to stoke their fire. Through servants and sympathetic guards, he sent messages to the streets, promising justice, bread, and an end to Joffrey's cruelty. He spoke of Ned Stark's honor, of Rhaegar's dream of a better realm. The small folk ate it up, their chants growing louder, their makeshift banners bearing crude dragons and wolves. One morning, as Jon stood in the keep's courtyard, a boy no older than Bran slipped through the guards, his face smudged with soot. "They're planning something, my lord," he whispered, glancing at the gold cloaks. "And the people, they're gathering at the Great Sept tonight. They want you to come, to speak." Jon knelt, his voice low. "It's too dangerous. The Lannisters would have my head if I left these walls." The boy's eyes shone with defiance. "They'll fight for you, my lord. They believe you're the true king. Show 'em you're not afraid." Jon hesitated, then pressed a coin into the boy's hand. "Tell them I hear them. Tell them I'll come when the time is right." As the boy vanished, Brynden appeared at Jon's side, his face grim. "You're playing with wildfire, lad. If you go to them, you'll start a war in the city." "And if I don't, I lose them," Jon said. "The small folk are my army, Brynden. Without them, my claim is just words." The Blackfish shook his head. "You're Ned's son, all right. Stubborn as stone. Just don't expect me to mop up the blood when it all goes wrong." The second council convened in the throne room, its air thick with tension. The Iron Throne gleamed under torchlight, Joffrey perched upon it like a petulant child playing at God. Cersei stood at his side, her golden hair bound in a severe braid, her eyes cold as winter. Tyrion lingered near the dais, his expression a mix of amusement and unease. The hall was packed. Lords of the Crown Lands, Tyrell envoys, the Dornish emissary Ser Andre Dalt, and even a handful of minor houses from the Stormlands, their loyalties uncertain. The King's Guard lined the walls, their white cloaks stark against the crimson tapestries. Jon entered with his escort, Longclaw at his hip, the parchment of his birth clutched in his hand. The weight of every gaze pressed against him, but he stood tall, his gray eyes sweeping the hall. This was no mere parley, it was a reckoning. Cersei's voice cut through the murmurs. "Jon Snow, you have stirred rebellion in our streets and challenged the rightful king. Present your case and let the realm decide your fate." Jon stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, wed in secret before the gods. This letter, written by Maester Aemon, proves my birth. I claim the Iron Throne not for glory, but to save a realm drowning in blood. Joffrey's rule is tyranny. His taxes starve the people. His justice is murder. His wars tear the land apart. I offer peace, unity, and justice. Judge me not by my name, but by my deeds." He held up the parchment, its words a beacon in the flickering light. The hall was silent. The Lord's face is a mix of doubt, intrigue, and fear. Sir Andre Dalt spoke first, his voice smooth. Dorne has no love for Lannisters, but a claim requires more than paper. What swords do you bring, Aegon Targaryen? The North stands with me, Jon said. The Vale's knights march, and the Riverlands rally to my cause. Dorne could join us, and together we'd end this war. The Lannisters offer only chains. Join me, and we'll forge a new realm. Lord Mace Tyrell, his doublet straining over his bulk, cleared his throat. The Reach desires peace, but stability is paramount. Joffrey is anointed, crowned. Why should we risk chaos for an untested claimant? Because Joffrey's crown is built on lies, Jon said. He's no true king. He rules through fear, not right. The small folk know it, and so do you. I'll bring stability not by force, but by trust. The realm needs a king who listens, not one who screams. Joffrey's face purpled, his voice a shriek. You dare insult me? I'll have you flayed, you filthy bastard! The outburst drew gasps, and Jon saw his chance. A true king doesn't threaten, he leads. The small folk starve while you feast, Joffrey. They chant my name because they believe in me. Will you face them or hide behind your mother's skirts? The hall erupted, lords shouting, some laughing. Cersei's hand shot out, silencing Joffrey, but the damage was done. Tyrion's lips twitched, his eyes gleaming with something like respect. Cersei's voice was ice. You speak boldly, Snow, but words are not swords. The throne is Joffrey's, and the realm will not bow to a northern pretender. Then let the realm decide, Jon said. Call a great council, as Aegon the Conqueror did. Let every lord from Dorne to the Wall judge my claim. If they deny me, I'll yield. If they uphold me, Joffrey steps down. The proposal hung in the air, a challenge no one could ignore. Ser Andre nodded slowly. Dorne would support such a council. Let the truth be tested. Mace Tyrell hesitated, then inclined his head. The Reach would consider it, if assurances are made. Cersei's eyes flashed, but she forced a smile. We will deliberate. Until then, Snow, you remain our guest. Jon bowed, sensing the shift. The lords were wavering, and Joffrey's outburst had weakened his cause. But Cersei's smile was a viper's, and Jon knew she was far from defeated. That night, Jon made his move. The small folks gathering at the Great Sept was a risk, but also an opportunity. With Brendan and 5 men, he slipped from the Red Keep under cover of darkness, cloaked in plain wool. The city was alive with tension, the air thick with smoke and the distant clang of steel. The gold cloaks were distracted, quelling riots in the docks, and Jon's party moved swiftly through the shadows. The Great Sept loomed against the night sky, its 7 towers aglow with torchlight. A crowd of thousands filled the plaza, their faces gaunt but defiant. Men, women, children, bakers, smiths, whores, and beggars stood shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising in a chant. Aegon, Aegon, Aegon. Jon climbed the steps, his heart pounding. The crowd roared as they saw him, their hope a tangible force. He raised his hands and silence fell, every eye on him. I am Aegon Targaryen, he began, his voice carrying over the plaza. Son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, raised by Ned Stark as his own. I've come not to conquer, but to save. Joffrey starves you, kills you, mocks you. I will feed you, protect you, honor you. Stand with me, and we'll build a realm where no man kneels in fear. The crowd erupted, their cheers shaking the Sept's walls. A woman, her face lined with hunger, pushed forward, tears in her eyes. You're our king, Aegon! Save us! Jon knelt before her, taking her hand. I swear it, he said. I'll fight for you, all of you. The moment was a spark, and the crowd caught fire. They surged forward, some kneeling, others raising fists. Jon felt their faith like a tide, lifting him, but also a weight, binding him to their hopes. Brendan pulled him back, his voice urgent. We need to go. The gold cloaks will come. Jon nodded, but as they slipped away he saw a figure in the shadows, a cloaked man watching. Tyrion Lannister, his face unreadable. Jon met his gaze, then vanished into the night. The Great Sept rally changed everything. By dawn, the city was in chaos, the small folk openly defying Joffrey's rule. Markets shut, taverns overflowed with rebels, and crude dragon banners appeared on walls. The gold cloaks struck back, blood staining the cobbles, but the riots only grew. In the Red Keep, Cersei summoned Jon to a private audience, her face a mask of fury and fear. They met in a solar overlooking the bay, Jaime Lannister at her side, his hand never far from his sword. Tyrion was absent, a fact that set Jon on edge. "You've turned my city against me," Cersei said, her voice low. "The small folk are rabble, but their numbers are a threat. What do you want, Snow? Gold? A title? Name your price and end this madness." Jon stood tall, unflinching. "I want the throne. It's mine by right, and the people know it. Yield, and I'll spare your son's life. Refuse, and the city will rise." Jaime's eyes narrowed. Bold words for a boy with no army inside these walls. One command, and you're dead. "Then give it," Jon said, his hand on Longclaw. "But know this, the small folk will burn this keep to ash if I fall. You can't kill them all." Cersei's lips tightened. "You're a fool, like your father. Ned thought honor would save him, and it's got him a headsman's axe. Leave King's Landing, or you'll share his fate." "I'm not leaving," Jon said. "Call the Great Council, or face the consequences." Cersei's smile was venomous. "Very well. The council will convene in 3 days. But know this, Snow, every lord has a price, and I have gold enough to buy them all." Jon bowed and left, his mind racing. Cersei was cornered, but that made her dangerous. He needed allies within the keep, and he needed them now. That evening Tyrion found Jon in the Godswood, a rare pocket of quiet amid the keep's chaos. The dwarf carried a lantern, his face shadowed but his eyes sharp. "You've stirred a hornet's nest," Tyrion said, settling on a stone bench. "The small folk love you, the lords fear you, and my sister hates you. Quite a feat for a bastard-turned-dragon." Jon sat across from him, wary. "What do you want, Lannister? You've played both sides since I arrived." Tyrion's laugh was dry. "I play the side that keeps me alive. You're a problem, Jon, but also a solution. Joffrey's a disaster, half the court knows it. Your claim, mad as it seems, could end this war. But you're walking a knife's edge." "Then help me," Jon said. "You're cleverer than Cersei, and you know the court. Back my claim, and I'll make you a lord in truth, not a mocked dwarf." Tyrion's eyes flickered, but he shook his head. "Tempting, but I'm a Lannister. Blood binds me, even to monsters. Still, I'll give you this. Watch Varys. The spider's been too quiet, and that means he's spinning a web. And beware, Pycelle. He's Cersei's creature, and he's whispering to every lord with a vote." Jon nodded, storing the warning. "And you? Where do you stand when the council meets?" Tyrion sipped his wine, his smile enigmatic. "Wherever the wind blows, Jon. But if you want my advice, don't trust anyone, not even me." Tyrion's warning proved prescient. The next day, a note slipped under Jon's door, unsigned but written in a delicate hand. "Meet me in the Tower of the Hand at midnight. The realm's fate hangs in the balance." Jon suspected Varys, the eunuch whose web of spies stretched across Westeros. Against Bryndon's protests he went, Longclaw at his side. The tower was dark, its halls empty save for the flicker of a single candle. Varys waited in a shadowed chamber, his powdered face serene, his robes whispering as he moved. "You are bold, Aegon Targaryen," Varys said, his voice soft. "The realm teeters, and you are its pivot, but boldness alone will not win a throne." Jon's hand rested on Longclaw. "What do you want, Spider? I've had enough of games." "No games," Varys said. "I serve the realm, and the realm needs a king who can heal, not destroy. Your claim has merit, but Cersei will buy or kill every lord who might support you. You need proof beyond a letter, something undeniable." Jon's eyes narrowed. "What proof?" Varys smiled faintly. "There are those who knew of Rhaegar's marriage, men and women who served him, who witnessed his love for Lyanna. Some yet live, hidden in Dorne and the free cities. I can find them, but it will take time. Until then, you must survive the council." "And why should I trust you?" Jon asked. "Because I have no love for Lannisters," Varys said, "and because I believe you might be the king we need. Win the small folk, hold the lords, and I will bring you the truth." Jon studied him, sensing a trap, but also a chance. "Do it! But if you betray me, you'll answer to my sword." Varys bowed. "As you say, your grace." The council's eve brought new threats. A fire broke out in Flea Bottom, blamed on Jon's supporters, and Joffrey used it to declare a martial law. Gold cloaks flooded the streets, and Jon and his men were confined to their quarters. Cersei's hand was clear. She meant to crush the rebellion before the council could meet. Jon met with his allies in secret, Brynden and a Vale Knight named Sir Lyn Corbray plotting their next move. "We can't stay here," Lyn said, his voice sharp. "Cersei's planning something. My spies saw a sellsword slipping into the keep." Brynden nodded. "We need to get you out, Jon. The army's camped at the crossroads. If we reach them, we can march on the city." Jon shook his head. "Not yet. The council's my last chance for peace. If I flee, I lose the lords. We hold until tomorrow." Lyn's eyes flashed. "And if Cersei slaughters us?" "Then we fight," Jon said, his voice steel. "But I came to save the realm, not burn it." That night, Jon stood at his window watching the city glow with firelight. The small folks' chants still echoed, fainter now, but unbroken. He thought of Robb fighting in the north, of Sansa, a prisoner somewhere in this keep, of Arya, lost to the winds. He thought of Ned, whose honor had cost him everything. Jon was no longer a boy, no longer a bastard. He was Aegon Targaryen, and the realm's fate rested on his shoulders. As dawn broke, a horn sounded, and the council convened. Jon donned his grey cloak, Longclaw at his side, and stepped into the lion's den one last time. The throne room of the Red Keep was a cauldron of tension, its air heavy with the scent of the wax and fear. The Iron Throne loomed at the far end, its twisted blades glinting under torchlight, a silent judge over the realm's fate. Joffrey Baratheon sat upon it, his golden crowns gleaming, his face a mask of petulant fury. Cersei stood at his side, her emerald eyes sharp as daggers, while Tyrion Lannister lingered in the shadows, his mismatched gaze flickering between calculation and unease. The hall was packed. Lords of the Crownlands, Tyrell envoys, the Dornish emissary Sir André Dalt, and a scattering of Stormlanders, their loyalties a tangled web. The Kingsguard stood rigid, their white cloaks a stark contrast to the crimson banners, and the small folk, though barred from the hall, made their presence felt with distant chants of Aegon that seeped through the walls. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen strode into the hall, his grey cloak stained from the road, Longclaw at his hip, and the parchment of his birth clutched in his hand. His escort, now only 12 men after losses to Cersei's ambushes, fanned out behind him, Sir Brandon Tully's grizzled presence a steady anchor. Jon's heart pounded, but his face was stone. This was the great council he had demanded, the moment that would crown him king or mark him for death. The small folk believed in him, the North and Vale stood with him, and Dorne's interest gave him hope. But Cersei's gold and Joffrey's cruelty were formidable foes, and the Lord's votes were far from certain. Cersei's voice rang out, smooth and venomous. "Jon Snow, self-styled Aegon Targaryen, you have sown rebellion and challenged the anointed king. This council will hear your claim and render judgment. Speak, and be done." Jon stepped forward, his voice steady, carrying over the hall's murmurs. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, wed in secret before the gods. This letter, written by Maester Aemon, proves my birth. I claim the Iron Throne not for pride, but to save a realm torn by war and tyranny. Joffrey's rule is a plague. His cruelty starves the small folk. His wars bleed the land. His justice is a jest. I offer unity, honor, and peace. The North, the Vale, and the Riverlands stand with me. Dorne and the Reach could join us. Judge me by my deeds, not my name, and choose a king who will heal, not destroy." He held up the parchment, its words a beacon in the flickering light. The hall stirred, lords whispering, some nodding, others scowling. Sir André Dalt rose, his voice calm but firm. "Dorne has heard your claim, Aegon Targaryen, and finds it compelling. If witnesses to Rhaegar's marriage can be found, we will stand with you, but we need more than paper to unseat a king." Lord Mace Tyrell, his face flushed, cleared his throat. "The Reach seeks stability. Joffrey is crowned anointed. Your claim is bold but unproven. Why should we risk war for a northern lord?" Jon met his gaze. "Because Joffrey's crown rests on lies. He rules through fear, not right. The small folk chant my name because they hunger for hope. I've faced death to stand here, to offer a realm where lords and small folk alike can thrive. Will you choose a boy who burns bridges or a man who builds them?" Joffrey leapt to his feet, his voice a shriek. "He's a traitor, a bastard! I'll have his head on a spike!" The outburst drew gasps, and Jon saw the lords' faces harden. Joffrey's temper was his own worst enemy, and Jon pressed the advantage. A true king doesn't scream for blood. He listens, he leads. I've walked among the small folk, heard their pain. I've fought beside the North, earned their trust. I ask you to trust me now. Choose me, and we'll end this war together. Cersei's hand shot out, silencing Joffrey, but her smile was a blade. Bold words, Snow, but you bring no army to these walls. The throne is Joffrey's, and the realm will not bow to a pretender with a single letter. Then let the lords vote, Jon said, his voice ringing. Let the realm decide, as Aegon the Conqueror did. If you fear my claim, Cersei, let it be tested. Or do you doubt your son's right? The hall erupted, lords shouting, some cheering. Tyrion's lips twitched as if amused, while Cersei's face paled, her control slipping. She raised a hand, her voice cutting through the din. Very well. The lords will vote. But know this, Snow. If you lose, you'll face a traitor's death. Jon nodded, his fate now in the hands of men swayed by gold, fear, and ambition. The lords deliberated in a side chamber, their voices a low rumble behind closed doors. Jon waited in the throne room, his men tense, Bryndon's hand never far from his sword. The small folks' chants grew louder, a drumbeat of defiance that rattled the keep's walls. Jon felt their faith like a tide, but also a weight. If the vote went against him, the city would burn, and he would be the spark. Tyrion approached, a flagon of wine in hand, his expression unreadable. You've played a dangerous game, Jon, he said, his voice low. The small folk love you, but lords love gold. Cersei's been busy. Pycelles whispered to every house with a price. Jon's jaw tightened. And you? Where do you stand? Tyrion sipped his wine, his eyes gleaming. I stand where the realm needs me. Joffrey's a disaster, but you're a gamble. If you win, don't forget who kept you alive this long. Before Jon could reply, the doors opened, and the lords filed back. Cersei took her place beside Joffrey, her face a mask of confidence. The hall fell silent, every eye on Lord Mace Tyrell, chosen to speak the verdict. The lords of Westeros have voted, Mace said, his voice heavy. By a narrow margin we find Jon Snow's claim unproven. Joffrey Baratheon remains the rightful king. The words struck like a blow, but Jon stood tall, his eyes sweeping the hall. Some lords avoided his gaze, others smirked. Ser Andre Dalt's face was grim, his nod subtle but clear. Dorne had voted for Jon, but not enough had followed. Cersei's smile was triumphant, Joffrey's laugh a grating cackle. Seize the traitor! Joffrey shrieked, pointing at Jon. I want his head! The Kingsguard advanced, Jaime Lannister at their head, his sword drawn. Jon's men closed ranks, Bryndon's blade flashing free. The hall teetered on the edge of bloodshed, but Jon raised a hand, his voice calm. Hold, he said. I came under a truce, and I'll leave under one. The lords have spoken, but the realm hasn't. The small folk know the truth, and so do you. This isn't over. Cersei's eyes narrowed, but she waved the Kingsguard back. Take your men and go, Snow. If you're found in my city by dawn, you'll die. Jon bowed, his gaze locked on hers. I'll return, Cersei. And next time, I'll bring an army. The escape was a gauntlet. Jon and his men slipped from the Red Keep under cover of darkness, their path lit by the glow of fires in Flea Bottom. The small folks, enraged by rumors of the council's verdict, had taken to the streets, clashing with gold cloaks in a chaos that masked Jon's flight. Bryndon led the way, his knowledge of the city's alleys a lifeline. They reached the Lion Gate, where their horses waited, and rode hard for the crossroads where Jon's army was camped. The journey was tense, every shadow a potential assassin. Jon's mind churned with the council's failure, but also with the small folks' faith. They had called him king, and he would not abandon them. The North Vale and Riverlands were his foundation. Dorne's interest was a spark he could fan. The Reach was wavering, and even some Stormlanders had looked at him with respect. The war was not lost. It was just beginning. At the crossroads, Jon's army greeted him with cheers, Greyjoy Umber's booming voice rising above the rest. You're alive, lad! That's more than I expected from those South Arryn snakes! Jon dismounted, Ghost bounding to his side, the direwolf's red eyes a comfort. The council rejected my claim, he said, addressing his commanders, Mage Mormont Lincoln Bray and Edmure Tully among them. But the small folk believe, and so do I. We march on King's Landing, not as rebels, but as a realm united. Who's with me?" The camp roared, swords raised, banners waving, wolf, bear, falcon, and trout. Jon felt the fire within him blaze. He was Aegon Targaryen, and he would take his throne, not for himself, but for the realm. Weeks passed, and Jon's campaign gained momentum. Robb's victories in the Westerlands drew Lannister forces north, thinning King's Landing's defenses. The Vale's knights bolstered Jon's army, and Dorne sent a small force, led by Ser Andre, with a promise of more if Jon proved his claim. Varys, true to his word, sent word of witnesses, a Dornish septon and a former Targaryen retainer, who confirmed Regeneron Rhaegar's marriage. The proof was fragile, but it swayed wavering lords, and the reach began to fracture, some houses sending envoys to Jon's camp. King's Landing, meanwhile, descended into chaos. Joffrey's brutality, executing suspected rebels, raising taxes to fund his war, turned even loyalists against him. The small folk, inspired by Jon's rally at the Great Sept, formed militias, their crude dragon banners a challenge to the Lannisters. When Jon's army, now 20,000 strong, appeared on the horizon, the city's gates groaned under the pressure of rebellion within and without. Jon stood on a rise overlooking the city, Ghost at his side, his banners snapping in the wind. Brynden approached, his face lined but resolute. "You've got a chance, lad. The city's ready to break, but Cersei won't yield, and Joffrey's mad enough to burn it all." Jon nodded, his eyes on the Red Keep's distant spires. "Then we take it. For the small folk, for Ned, for the realm." As the siege began, a raven arrived from Tyrion, its message brief. "The city is yours if you can take it. Joffrey's lost the lords, but Cersei's planning something. Watch the wildfire." Jon burned the note, his resolve hardening. The imp was playing his own game, but Jon knew he was no fool. Wildfire was Cersei's last resort, a desperate gambit to deny him the throne. The battle was fierce but swift. The small folk opened the gates, and Jon's army poured in, clashing with gold cloaks and Lannister loyalists. Jon led the charge, Longclaw a blur, Ghost a white terror at his side. The Red Keep fell by nightfall, Joffrey captured in the throne room, Cersei and Jaime cornered in Maegor's holdfast. Jon faced them, his face grim but merciful. "You've lost," he said. "Yield, and I'll spare your lives. Exile, not death." Cersei spat, her defiance unbroken. "You'll never hold this throne, bastard." Joffrey whimpered, but Jaime nodded, his sword lowered. "Take it, then, but you'll bleed for it." Jon spared them, true to his word, sending them to Essos under guard. The small folk cheered as he ascended the Iron Throne, his coronation a simple affair, witnessed by Northmen, Valaman, and Dornishmen. The realm was fractured but healing. Robb bent the knee, his loyalty unshaken, and the North swore fealty. The Reach and Stormlands followed, swayed by Jon's mercy and the witnesses Varys provided. Dorne pledged fully, and even the Iron Islands sent cautious envoys. Jon ruled as Aegon VI, his reign marked by justice and rebuilding. The small folk called him Aegon the Just, their faith repaid with bread and peace. Yet he never forgot the wall, the true threat beyond. As winter loomed, he sent men north, knowing the long night was coming. But for now, the realm was his. Won not by fire and blood, but by honor and hope.